The wedding hall went completely silent when the bride walked in. Not because she was late. Not because she looked nervous. But because every single person in that luxurious hall knew one shocking truth. She was not the woman who was supposed to be getting married. Originally, the bride had been Amina, the elegant and proud daughter of the family hosting the grand ceremony. The marriage had been arranged months earlier between her family and one of the most powerful men in Korea, Jang Do-hyun. To the public, he was a billionaire business tycoon. But in the shadows of the city, people whispered a different truth. Jang Do-hyun was a mafia boss whose influence stretched across countries. Politicians feared him. Rival syndicates avoided crossing him. And powerful businessmen desperately wanted his favor. Marrying into his empire meant power, protection, and unimaginable wealth. But everything changed 3 months before the wedding. A devastating accident left Jang Do-hyun paralyzed from the waist down. The news spread quickly. And the moment Amina heard it, she refused the marriage. She called him damaged. She said she would never tie her future to a man in a wheelchair. She screamed, cried, and threatened her parents until they realized she was serious. But canceling the marriage was impossible. Contracts had been signed. Business deals had already been secured through the alliance. If the wedding collapsed, the family would lose everything. So they made a cruel decision. If Amina refused to marry the disabled mafia boss, someone else would take her place. Someone who had no power to refuse. The quiet daughter they had always ignored. The girl who had grown up doing chores while Amina lived in luxury. Her name was Amara. And now she walked slowly down the aisle toward the most feared man in Korea. Guests whispered behind their hands. Some pitied her. Some mocked her. Others believed her life had just been ruined forever. But none of them noticed the sharp, calculating gaze of Jang Do-hyun as he watched his unexpected bride approach. Because in that moment the dangerous mafia boss realized something very unusual. Unlike everyone else in that room, the woman walking toward him was not looking at him with fear. And that single detail sparked a curiosity that would soon change both of their lives in ways no one could have imagined.
The ceremony felt cold. There was no excitement, no laughter, and no warmth filling the grand wedding hall. The decorations were beautiful and expensive, yet the atmosphere carried a strange tension that everyone could feel. Amara stood beside Jang Do-hyun at the altar, holding a bouquet that felt heavier with every passing second. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. She could feel hundreds of eyes watching her. Some guests whispered quietly to each other. Others stared openly, clearly fascinated by the scandal unfolding before them. This wedding had already become the most talked about event in the city. The priest continued speaking calmly, guiding them through the formal vows that had been prepared by their families. Amara tried to focus on the words, but her mind kept drifting. Everything had happened so quickly. Just 3 days earlier she had been cleaning dishes in her family's kitchen when her stepmother called her into the living room. The expressions on their faces told her immediately that something was wrong. Her father looked uncomfortable. Her stepmother looked cold. And Amina looked relieved. "You will be the one marrying Jang Do-hyun," her stepmother had said without hesitation. Amara thought she had misheard. But they repeated it again. "The deal cannot be cancelled. The marriage must happen. Since Amina refuses, you will take her place." The words still echoed in her mind now as she stood at the altar. She glanced toward the front row of guests. Amina sat there in a sparkling dress, smiling softly as if she were attending a glamorous party rather than watching her stepsister marry the man who was supposed to be her groom. When their eyes met, Amina lifted her glass slightly. It was not a gesture of support. It felt more like mockery. Amara quickly looked away. The priest's voice pulled her back to the present. The rings were exchanged. Their signatures were written. And just like that, the marriage was official. Applause filled the hall, though it sounded forced and awkward. Within minutes the guests began leaving. To them the entertainment was already over. 2 tall men in black suits approached Amara. "Car is ready, madam." The word madam felt strange in her ears. She turned one last time toward her family. Her father avoided her gaze. Her stepmother was already chatting with guests as if nothing unusual had happened. Amina simply smiled. Good luck, she mouthed silently. Amara took a deep breath. Then she walked away without looking back. Outside, a long black luxury car waited. Inside sat Jang Duhyun. His wheelchair was secured carefully in the vehicle, and his expression remained calm as she stepped in. For several minutes neither of them spoke. Finally his voice broke the silence. You don't seem afraid. Amara looked at him. I haven't had time to think about fear. For the first time since the wedding began, a faint smile appeared on his face.
The mansion gates opened slowly as the car approached. Tall iron bars slid apart while armed guards watched carefully from both sides of the entrance. Amara had never seen security like this before. The car drove through a long private road lined with perfectly trimmed trees and elegant streetlights. At the end of the road stood an enormous mansion that looked more like a royal palace than a home. When the car stopped, several house staff members hurried forward. They bowed respectfully when Amara stepped out. "Welcome home, madam." The greeting startled her. Just hours earlier, she had been treated like an inconvenience in her family's house. Now strangers treated her with respect she had never experienced before. Inside the mansion, everything looked flawless. Marble floors stretched across the hall. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings. Expensive paintings decorated the walls. But despite the beauty, something about the place felt empty. There was no laughter, no warmth, no sense that people truly lived here. Doohyun noticed her expression as his assistant guided his wheelchair beside her. This house has always been quiet. His voice echoed slightly in the large hall. Amara nodded slowly. I can see that. A housemaid approached politely and offered to show her to her room. The bedroom prepared for her was enormous. The bed alone looked larger than the entire room she had grown up sleeping in. Soft curtains covered the tall windows, and fresh flowers decorated a small table near the balcony. But standing there alone, Amara felt something unexpected. Loneliness. Later that evening, a maid informed her that dinner was ready. When she entered the dining room, Doohyun was already seated at the long table. The room could easily host 20 people. Yet only the two of them sat there. Dinner was served quietly. After several minutes of silence, he spoke. Your family accepted a large payment for this marriage. Amara nodded slowly. I know. But they also signed something else. He slid a document toward her. Amara read it carefully. Her stomach tightened. If she left the marriage or caused any public scandal, her family would lose everything they owned. You're trapped here just as much as I am, he said calmly. Amara looked at him. Then she surprised him with her answer. I was already trapped before this marriage. For a moment he said nothing. Then he studied her with a new kind of curiosity.
Life inside the mansion slowly settled into a routine. Each morning the staff greeted Amara politely. Meals were prepared on time. Security guards patrolled the property day and night. Everything ran with perfect discipline. Yet Amara could sense something beneath the surface. The staff respected Jang Doohyun deeply, but they also seemed worried. One afternoon Amara walked through the garden and overheard two guards speaking quietly. Rival groups are testing our defenses again. They think the boss is weak now. Amara continued walking, pretending she had not heard anything. Later that evening she found Doohyun working in his office. Large screens displayed financial reports and surveillance footage from different locations across the city. You never rest, she said softly. He looked up. Running an empire requires constant attention. She hesitated before asking the question on her mind. Are your enemies really trying to challenge you? He leaned back slightly. Because they believe my accident made me powerless. Amara studied him carefully. Did it? A small smile appeared on his face. Well, but it made them brave enough to try. At that moment one of his trusted guards entered the room. Boss, we intercepted another shipment attack tonight. Doohyun nodded calmly. Handle it. The guard left quickly. Amara realized something important in that moment. Despite his condition, Jang Do-hyun still controlled everything with absolute authority. No one in his organization doubted him. As she turned to leave the office, his voice stopped her. "Amara." She looked back. "You've been unusually calm since arriving here." She shrugged slightly. "My life has never been peaceful." He watched her carefully. "Tell me about it." For the first time, she spoke openly about her childhood. About growing up ignored. About watching Amina receive everything while she received nothing. About being treated like a stranger in her own home. When she finished, the room became quiet. Do-hyun looked at her differently now. Not with curiosity, but with respect. "You survived a cruel world before entering mine." Amara nodded. He turned his wheelchair slightly toward the window. "Then perhaps you are stronger than they expect." Outside the mansion walls, enemies were already watching and waiting for the moment they believed the powerful Mafia boss would finally fall. But inside the mansion something unexpected had begun. A quiet alliance between two people who had both been underestimated by the world. And neither of them realized yet just how powerful that alliance would become. Life inside Jang Do-hyun's mansion slowly settled into a strange rhythm that Amara had never imagined she would experience. Every morning the large gates opened and closed as security teams rotated shifts. The staff prepared meals with careful precision, and the quiet halls of the estate carried an atmosphere of order that rarely changed. At first Amara felt like an outsider in the enormous house. The rooms were beautiful, yet they felt unfamiliar and distant, as if she were only visiting someone else's life. But something unexpected began to happen. The staff slowly started warming up to her. Unlike most wealthy women who entered the mansion with pride and strict demands, Amara behaved differently. She greeted the workers politely when she passed them in the halls. She thanked the cooks for preparing meals. She even helped one of the younger maids carry a tray when she noticed the girl struggling. The gesture shocked the staff. One afternoon Amara entered the kitchen quietly and found two maids whispering near the counter. The moment they saw her, they quickly stopped talking and bowed nervously. "You don't have to stop because I came in," Amara said softly. One of the maids looked embarrassed. "We didn't mean any disrespect, madam." "I know," Amara replied gently. "I was only coming to get some tea." The older maid hesitated before speaking again. "Madam, may I ask something?" Amara nodded. "Course." The maid spoke carefully. "Why are you so kind to us?" The question caught Amara off guard. "Kind?" "Yes," the maid continued. "Most wives of powerful men rarely even speak to the staff. They treat us like we are invisible." Amara lowered her eyes for a moment. "I know what it feels like to be invisible." Her answer surprised them both. For years she had lived in her own family's home like an outsider. Amina received attention, expensive gifts, and endless praise, while Amara quietly handled chores and responsibilities no one acknowledged. Respecting others had always come naturally to her because she understood what it meant to be overlooked. Later that evening the atmosphere inside the mansion felt slightly different. The staff moved through the halls with lighter expressions. Smiles appeared more often. Even the security guards greeted Amara with a little more warmth. Upstairs in his office, Jang Do-hyun was reviewing security reports when he noticed something unusual on the surveillance monitors. The staff appeared happier. He watched a moment as one of the maids spoke to Amara in the hallway. The conversation looked relaxed, even friendly. Do-hyun leaned back in his chair thoughtfully. Since the accident, the mansion had felt cold and tense. The staff feared making mistakes around him. Conversations were quiet. Every movement felt cautious. But now that atmosphere was shifting. And the only new presence in the house was Amara. Later that night he found her sitting in the mansion library with a book resting gently in her hands. The warm lights above the shelves reflected softly across the room. "You've made quite an impression on the staff." Amara looked up in surprise. "Have I?" He moved his wheelchair slightly closer. "They seem more comfortable than usual." Amara closed the book slowly. "That's good, isn't it?" He studied her expression. "Most people believe fear is the best way to control others." Amara shook her head. Fear might force obedience, but it doesn't create loyalty. Her words hung quietly in the air. 4 years Du-hyun had built his empire using discipline, intelligence, and power. Fear was often a tool that kept enemies from crossing him. Yet listening to Amara speak so calmly made him reconsider something. Perhaps loyalty built through respect was stronger than loyalty forced by fear. For the first time since his accident, the mansion no longer felt completely empty. And strangely enough, the woman forced into his life might be the one person capable of changing the atmosphere of the entire estate. Across the city, Amina was growing restless. When she had refused to marry Jang Du-hyun, she believed she had saved herself from a miserable future. Marrying a paralyzed mafia boss sounded like a prison sentence. But the rumors circulating through high society told a completely different story. Jang Du-hyun's influence had not weakened. In fact, many businessmen were quietly strengthening their partnerships with him again. His companies continued expanding across several industries, and whispers from the criminal underworld suggested his power was still intact. Even worse, people had begun discussing his mysterious new wife. The woman who had replaced Amina at the wedding. Amara. At first the gossip amused her, but soon it began irritating her. Some people described Amara as calm, graceful, and surprisingly intelligent. Others praised how quickly she had adapted to Du-hyun's world. Every compliment felt like an insult to Amina. That life was supposed to belong to her. One evening she confronted her parents in the living room. "You told me marrying him would ruin my life." Her mother looked uncomfortable. "At the time we believed his condition might weaken his empire. But it didn't," Amina snapped. Her father sighed. "The alliance with Du-hyun's organization remains extremely valuable." Amina paced across the room angrily. "So Amara gets the life that was meant for me." Her mother tried to calm her. "The marriage contract is already signed. Cannot be changed now." Amina stopped walking. "Then I'll go see them myself." 2 days later a sleek black car arrived at the gates of Du-hyun's estate. Security guards immediately contacted the main house. Inside his office Du-hyun listened calmly to the report. "Your sister-in-law is here, boss." He glanced toward Amara, who was reading nearby. "Seems your stepsister decided to visit." Amara looked surprised. "Amina is here." Moments later Amina entered the mansion. She wore an elegant designer dress and expensive jewelry, but her confident smile faded slightly as she looked around the enormous house. The luxury of the estate was greater than she had imagined. Jealousy flashed across her face before she quickly hid it. "You seem comfortable here," she said while looking at Amara. Amara remained calm. "I'm adjusting." Amina stepped closer. "You know he'll never truly love you." Before Amara could respond, a deep voice spoke from behind them. "You seem very interested in my marriage." Amina turned slowly. Jang Du-hyun watched her with calm but intimidating eyes. Even sitting in his wheelchair, his presence filled the entire room. For the first time since refusing the marriage, Amina felt something she had not expected. Regret. She forced a polite smile. "I was only checking on my sister." Du-hyun's expression remained unreadable. "Your concern is unnecessary." He looked briefly at Amara. "She is exactly where she belongs." Those words struck Amina harder than she expected. And in that moment she realized she might have made the biggest mistake of her life.
Late that night, the peaceful atmosphere of the mansion shattered. A loud alarm suddenly echoed through the entire estate. "Security breach detected." Red warning lights flashed along the hallways as guards rushed into position. Amara stepped out of her room in confusion and saw several armed men moving quickly through the corridor. "What's happening?" One of the guards stopped briefly. "Rival attackers, madam. Please return to your room." But before she could move, a familiar voice echoed down the hallway. "Bring her to the control room." Amara followed the guard into a large security command center filled with glowing screens and communication equipment. Jang Du-hyun sat in the center of the room surrounded by several trusted officers. Multiple surveillance monitors displayed the entire property. Through the cameras, they could see several vehicles outside the estate gates. Armed men were attempting to force their way inside. Amara felt a chill run down her spine. They're attacking the house. Du Hyun remained calm. They believe my accident made me weak. His voice carried no fear. Only calculation. Activate defense protocol, he ordered. Within seconds, the security team began moving with precise coordination. Steel barriers reinforced the gates. Snipers took positions across the property. Hidden defensive systems activated silently around the perimeter. Amara watched the screens as the attackers tried to push through the gates. They clearly expected an easy victory, but they had underestimated their target. Du Hyun issued commands with perfect clarity. Every movement of his guards was strategic. Within minutes, the attackers began retreating. Their vehicles sped away into the darkness before they could even reach the mansion. The room slowly relaxed as the alarms shut off. Amara exhaled slowly. That was terrifying. Du Hyun looked at her carefully. Yet you stayed. Most people would have panicked. She shrugged slightly. Running away has never solved my problems before. For a moment, he simply studied her face. There was strength in her calmness. Strength that reminded him of something important. The world believed Jang Du-hyun had become weaker. But now he realized something else. The quiet woman forced into his life might be the one ally capable of standing beside him when others would run. And together they were far stronger than anyone outside those walls realized. News of the failed attack spread quickly through the underground world of the city. By the next morning, powerful figures across the criminal network already knew what had happened. A rival group had attempted to strike Jang Du-hyun's estate, believing the accident that left him paralyzed had weakened his control. They expected fear, confusion, and vulnerability. Instead, they found something very different. A fortress. Inside the mansion, life returned to its usual quiet rhythm, but Amara could sense a deeper tension lingering in the air. Guards were doubled around the property. Vehicles moved in and out of the gates more frequently. Communication radios crackled constantly between security teams. Du-hyun was working longer hours than before. One evening, Amara entered his office and found him studying several digital maps displayed on large screens. The maps showed locations across the city, business districts, shipping routes, private warehouses. She stepped closer. You're preparing something. He glanced at her briefly. Defense. His voice remained calm, but she noticed something else in his expression. Determination. For months my enemies believed my accident made me weak, he continued. The attack last night proved they are becoming bold. Amara looked at the maps again. So what will you do? Du-hyun leaned back slightly in his chair. Remind them why they feared me in the first place. The words carried a quiet weight. Later that night, several black vehicles left the mansion under heavy security. Amara watched from the balcony as they disappeared through the gates. Inside those cars were Du-hyun's most trusted men, carrying orders that would spread across the city before sunrise. Within 24 hours, the rival group responsible for the attack began losing their influence. Their warehouses were shut down. Their business partners suddenly withdrew their support. Their territory was quietly absorbed by other organizations loyal to Du-hyun. No public violence. No loud retaliation. Just silent strategic dismantling. By the end of the week, the rival group had completely disappeared. In the underground world, the message became clear. Jang Du-hyun had not fallen, and anyone who challenged him would regret it. Later that evening, Amara joined him in the garden where he often spent quiet moments after long days. You didn't destroy them with violence, she said softly.
No.
He looked toward the distant city lights. Violence creates chaos. Strategy creates control. Amara smiled faintly. You're more patient than people think. Du-hyun studied her expression carefully. And you're far more perceptive than I expected. For a moment, neither of them spoke. But the quiet understanding between them was growing stronger with every passing day. As weeks passed, the balance of power around Jang Du-hyun began shifting once again. Business leaders who had been hesitant after his accident were slowly returning. Partnerships were renewed. Investments increased. The message had spread across both the corporate and criminal worlds. Du-hyun was still untouchable. But something else had also begun attracting attention. Amara. At first, many people viewed her as nothing more than a replacement bride forced into an unfortunate marriage. Yet those who interacted with her quickly realized she was far more capable than expected. She attended several private business gatherings beside Do-hyun, observing conversations carefully and speaking only when necessary. When she did speak, her words were thoughtful and calm. One evening during a quiet dinner meeting with several powerful investors, a heated discussion broke out over a risky business expansion. Two executives argued loudly across the table. Amara listened quietly for several minutes before speaking. If both sides continue competing for control, the project will collapse before it even begins. The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward her. She continued calmly. Instead of dividing the investment, restructure the partnership so both groups benefit from different stages of the project. Her suggestion surprised everyone. Do-hyun looked at her with quiet interest. After a few moments, one of the executives slowly nodded. That might actually work. The tension around the table eased. Later that night, as they returned to the mansion, Do-hyun spoke. You handled that meeting well. Amara looked slightly embarrassed. I only offered a simple idea. Most people in that room have decades of business experience, he replied. Yet you solved their problem in minutes. She shrugged lightly. Sometimes people are too focused on winning arguments instead of solving problems. Do-hyun allowed a faint smile. You're becoming very useful in my world. Amara looked at him carefully. Is that a compliment?
Yes.
He paused. And something else. She waited. Respect. For the first time since the forced marriage, Amara felt something warm settle in her chest. Their relationship had started as a cold arrangement, but somewhere along the way it had become something deeper. Something built on trust. Something built on understanding. And neither of them were pretending anymore. Several months later, the entire city buzzed with excitement over a major charity gala hosted by one of Korea's most influential organizations. Nearly every powerful business figure would attend, including Jang Do-hyun. For many people, this would be the first time seeing him publicly since his accident. Rumors spread rapidly. Some believed he would appear weak. Others expected him to avoid the event entirely. But when the night arrived, the ballroom fell silent as the entrance doors opened. Jang Do-hyun entered confidently in his wheelchair, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. Beside him walked Amara. Her elegant dress shimmered softly under the lights, and her calm expression carried a quiet confidence that surprised many of the guests. Whispers moved through the crowd. That's his wife. She's the replacement bride. But she doesn't look like someone forced into marriage. Across the ballroom, Amina stood frozen. She had also been invited to the gala. Watching Amara beside Do-hyun felt like a painful reminder of the decision she had made months earlier. The life she rejected now belonged to someone else. As Do-hyun greeted several powerful figures, Amara remained beside him gracefully, speaking politely with guests and observing the room carefully. At one moment, Amina finally approached them. Her voice was carefully controlled. You both seem very happy. Amara met her gaze calmly. Life is full of surprises. Amina turned to Do-hyun. You've done well for yourself. His eyes remained steady. So has Amara. There was no bitterness in his voice. Just simple truth. Amina forced a small smile before quietly walking away. Across the room, she watched the couple speaking with influential leaders and respected business partners. For the first time, she truly understood what she had lost. Meanwhile, Amara glanced at Do-hyun. Are you tired? He shook his head.
No.
Then he added quietly. A few months ago, everyone in this room believed my life was over. She smiled softly. And now? He looked around the ballroom filled with powerful figures. Now they remember who I am. Then his gaze returned to Amara. And they see who stands beside me. For the girl who had once been invisible in her own home, the moment felt almost unreal. The marriage that began as a cruel obligation had become the foundation of something far stronger. Not just power, not just alliance, but a partnership neither of them had expected. And as the night continued, It became clear to everyone watching that the quiet woman once forced into this marriage had become one of the most powerful figures standing beside Jang Do-hyun.